Okay, hello and welcome to the Leadership Growth Hour, an interactive monthly event that features timely leadership topics and tools to grow your leadership performance. I'm your host, Daniel Stewart, Executive Consultant and Coach and President of Stewart Leadership, a global consulting, coaching, and training firm aligning organizations on leadership, teaming, change, and talent. In short, we develop the people side to enable your growth strategies. Today, I'm excited to be joined by career development expert Tara Prosek, executive coach and business development director at Stewart Leadership. Welcome, Tara.
Thanks, Daniel. This is one of my favorite topics today, so excited to be here.
Absolutely, this is great. So the show is divided into two parts. The first half is content, conversation, and a few slides on a specific leadership topic. And the second part is open Q&A from the audience on any topic without slides. As Tara and I are talking, please write your questions and comments in the Q&A feature. Also, we will definitely link our slides in the show notes after. Now, on to the focus area of the day, engaging and retaining employees through career development. So, Tara, let's start off with this question. Why is career development such a hot topic these days? We see it so much in the press. We talk about it a lot. What is it that is contributing to that, please?
Yeah, well, Daniel, I feel like this has always been a hot topic for me personally, but it does seem like it's getting a lot of attention out there in the organizational workplace. At the end of the day, career development just makes sense. Organizations want to allow their people to grow and develop so that they can stay. When you take that career development philosophy aligned with the value of internal mobility, people get really excited. They see potential. They see a future at the company. They're excited. They're engaged. They have something they're working towards. And then that word gets out in the talent marketplace and supports the employer brand. So hiring becomes easier. There's so many benefits. And then from the employee side, we can put ourselves in our own shoes as to why did that matter. I think the first 10 years of my career, I did what everybody else wanted me to do. I didn't have any say in it. And so now it's so much more than just what does the business need? What is the employee good at? And we make a match. Now the employee gets to say, hey, I have interests, I have needs, I have motivations and desires. And that's, needs to be taken into the career decisions today. So there's a risk if organizations don't do this and don't embrace it. That's why people maybe leave earlier than they need to leave. And the value proposition really creates a win-win for both the employer and the employee. So I'm all about it, Daniel. So this is a fun one for me.
Absolutely. And in fact, I'm going to share this this slide. It has a few interesting stats on it. As so many of us read so many of these different stats, we've put together a few. Talk to us for a moment, Tara, in terms of how you're seeing these show up then in actuality. What's some of the impact of some of this?
Well, I think it's easy for us to say that it's the earlier career individuals that are sort of demanding some of this career development. But at the end of the day, all of us want to have our needs and our interests and our desires taken into consideration. And so, this slide is a moving target. It went from, quiet quitting, talent shortage. Now there's, a lot of layoffs, taking place. So the talent marketplace is a little all over the place. But what we can control is encouraging and supporting our employees to grow and stay with us. And that's going to help us with the retention, the engagement, career readiness as people need to advance in the organization. So I think the business case for career development is strong. I think it's only going to continue to strengthen. And I think we've seen some quotes that are even as career development being one of the biggest perks or employee benefits that we can really embrace today. And I think that's the popularity of this topic. Like, we need to do something to help people stay. want to stay.
And would you go so far as to say that career development in some way is like an expectation? Because in years past, it's kind of been a nice to have in some ways. If the organization can emphasize it, if they can talk about it, if there's level of comfort with your manager who happens to be able to talk through these things, or is this kind of like, yes, automatic, this is what organizations need to have? Are you seeing it swing that strongly?
Well, I think some of the larger employers have done a good job of this, even as far back as bringing in interns and co-ops and developing them at an early stage in order to help them guide their decision at the time of a full-time hire. So the large companies have done a good job of implementing career development, and they understand the value of having these people grow and stay inside the organization. I think it's the medium to small size organizations that we can't afford the attrition of talent. We have to find a way to keep people. So I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a good question to try to figure out. And you've identified a key factor, which is kind of the size, maturity level of an organization. Maybe there's a greater chance. What I just keep finding over and over again, this is a conversation that when people join organizations, they expect a level of comfort to have this conversation.
Right.
They don't always expect the most amazing, perfect opportunities all the time, but they need an opportunity to have the conversation and to know how to talk about it and to talk with somebody who knows what to do with it as well.
Yeah, it is all about the conversation. There is a side where I'm using the term employee just to generalize the participant inside the companies that we're talking about, the individual, I should say, is if we're in a college program, we receive some career services, how to create a powerful resume, a LinkedIn profile, some general career, advisory type services. But once we exit college, that's gone. And we haven't done a great job of supporting employees in continuing that career development journey. And so not only is the conversation important, but it's upskilling in these career competencies to ensure that people are equipped to make strategic, intentional decisions, and then have the tools and resources to actually make it happen.
Yeah. So let's get some interaction with the folks who are listening here. So, Tara, as you lead various career workshops, you sometimes will start off with a fantastic question. And if you don't mind posing it to everybody, I'd love to get some initial thoughts as folks type in their responses in the Q&A. So please, what is that question?
Yeah, well, I'd love to just have people start thinking about how they've made career decisions in their past. So I'll invite you all to think of one career decision you made. It doesn't matter when it was or what it was necessarily, but a career decision that you made, and what was the primary factor in that decision, the reason you made that decision. Because we're all making these career decisions. It's how are we making them? What's that factor, primary factor? So it might be fun if they're able to share it in the Q&A feature to kind of see what are some of the decision criteria that we're using.
I love it. So Q&A feature, folks can all think about in their own career. What was a decision-making point that they did to be able to then figure out, okay, I'm going to choose this job. And what was the factor that led them to choose it? And again, to your point, Tara, we may be thinking at different times in our careers, it will have different reasons. And we're already beginning to see some of these pop up here. Let's see here. Made one based on career growth opportunity. Absolutely. And then, future career opportunity or positioning oneself in that way. To stay with good company. Interesting. So Tara, as you're seeing this one, to stay with a good company, but limited my opportunities for growth, there is that level of comfort and safety and security that we're always balancing. How often do you see that play out, Tara?
Yeah. Well, that's one angle to look at it, Daniel. But you know what a mentor of mine said early in my career, I was probably 5 years in, and he said, the company that knows you the best will take the greatest chance on you. They know your track record, they know your character, they have an understanding of your capabilities, and they're going to allow you to do something that perhaps another employer wouldn't allow you to do. So that's a kind of a different take on your question, as far as the benefit of staying, opposite of having your growth limited, but actually it can expand based on somebody being willing to take a chance on you. So no two careers are the same. Everybody has a very unique situation taking place. When I ask this question in a large group, for example, let's say it's a presentation at a conference of some sort, sometimes they're very negative responses, like I'm running away from something, and other times it's about running towards something. And I think that's really important insight is, how are we making these decisions? Are we running towards an amazing opportunity that's going to grow us and challenge us and allow us to add value? Or are we running away from something that isn't a good fit, or it's gotten boring, or we've maxed out our growth potential? You want to be very intentional in your thought process here.
Yeah. And you just highlighted the two questions I'll often ask folks whenever they're thinking about the next opportunity. What are they running from? And what are they running to?
Mm-hmm.
And the point is to make sure you have great answers to both of those questions, for sure.
Yeah.
And also, there's a point here around location, especially with the work from home. How often are you seeing, Tara, that being such a consideration in terms of helping people make that next career move?
Well, I think the work from home or the physical space you're working in is one factor to consider. So part of the career development framework that we at Stewart Leadership support is a process of creating what we call your guiding criteria. It's sort of a compass, a list, so that you're making a holistic decision, not based on one factor, but ignoring the other 9 or 10 important ones. And so for some people, working remote could be a deal breaker. It's number 1 on their list. For someone else, it might be number 10 or number 12. And we have to weigh that out based on the other criteria. So the process that I'm a big fan of is it's about viewing this in a holistic way, so that we're not running towards an extra $5,000 a year, or we're running towards something that sounds cooler than it is, but we have a very strategic business plan that we're using to ground us in our decisions.
Yeah, that's a great one. And I'm seeing other comments, and folks, you're welcome to keep typing in. These are great, and we'll continue to get at some of these questions now as well as in the future. We want to talk for a moment around what could be a framework or an approach that the individual can use. And then we can transfer that to how does the organization adapt and use that as well? Because there are two players. So let me just share this one slide here. And Tara, walk us through this framework, if you could.
Yeah. So, this framework starts with career planning. In a previous career, I was a commercial loan officer, and I would have a very talented, I'll use this as an example, a very talented mechanic come to see me wanting a loan to buy the building that the business had been run out of. And I would ask for a business plan, right? I can't give a loan without a business plan. And there wasn't a business plan. There wasn't pro forma financial statements. There wasn't forecasts on budgets or anything. And so without a plan, we can't make a decision to loan that money. Well, your career is your business. The career that you're running You have a professional service that you're offering to the marketplace, and in return, you're receiving benefits and pay and fun and challenge and all those things. We need a career plan to manage this in an effective way. And it's really the step that everybody wants to skip. They want to jump right into, oh, there's a really awesome job at my work. I want to apply for it. I need to get my resume updated. They want to jump to number 2. But we really need to be thoughtful in what we want to do, why we want to do it, and conducting a gap analysis to ensure that we're qualified to get there, and connect this step to your development plan at work. So step 1 is really the foundation. Once you have your plan, just like any business plan, you just have to refine it over time, check in on it, maybe annually, like you would a strategic plan, for example. So number 1 is where I'm really passionate about, because it's the hard work, but it's really where the rubber meets the road. Once you have a career aspiration that you're charting towards, your personal branding comes into play. This is everything that you would think about. Your internal resume, how you're representing you and your organization on LinkedIn, how you're talking about your career, your role, what you want to do next at your company, that conversational intelligence piece. That naturally leads into building out your personal career advisory board. Are you building up your peer-to-peer relationships inside the company? Are you staying connected to industry experts outside the company? Really ensuring that building relationships are top of mind. And then lastly, this idea of preparing. Originally this was, I used the word advance, but advance might imply that we're going up. Preparing means, am I doing what I need to do to take on more responsibility, to grow in my current role? Am I going to interview as effectively as an external candidate that I'm up against for this internal job? Am I going to onboard successfully? And so this is kind of a cycle. This framework is a cycle that will allow every individual to own their career in a very intentional way.
As you work with so many different leaders going through this cycle, you mentioned a little bit around this. Where do people not want to focus as much, and why?
Well, everybody's a little different. If we did a kind of a poll with the audience today, you're probably going to see somebody pick each one. Everybody's, I don't want to build relationships, or I don't want to work on my resume. It's not my talent, So everybody kind of has their own thing. What I think has traditionally been missed is this career planning. I believe employees look to their managers for advice on what they should do next. That ownership in your career hasn't always been the forefront. And one of the drives for career development is the employee owns their career. They own their decision. The managers, we're here to support and guide and support and connect and challenge and things like that.
Yeah.
So I didn't really answer your question.
Well, you did in many ways. And frankly, I want to jump out to and ask everybody who's listening here in the Q&A, type in which of these 4 areas you have had the hardest time with in being able to then spend time on and focus on and be successful at. Which of these 4 areas, which of these 4 sections have you struggled the most in being able to then feel good about and utilize as you then continue advancing in your career? Jot just the 1, 2, 3, or 4, or the plan, market, network, or prepare. Which of these areas are you a little uncomfortable with or haven't been able to do it as well? I'd be so interested to see some of these things, because just as you're talking about, Tara, this planning part can sometimes be tricky. But yet these other elements, for whatever reason, and we're seeing a lot of answers here, the networking, the planning, a lot of it, Tara, do you see at the beginning of this process, or rather, does it get into the network? What parts do you see, or really does it so depend on the individual?
Well, the reason these are numbered 1 through 4 is because each step gets easier if the previous step is refined. So if you're going to meet with an industry expert and have coffee because you're working on building out sort of a personal career advisory board, and when that person asks you, what do you do at such and such a company, or tell me about your role, having gone through 1 and 2, they're really confident and clear in the value they bring to the organization, and their first impression is worlds apart from kind of being asked these questions when you're caught off guard. For example, if we asked anybody, today, just pick somebody in your network and say, how do you define career success? Or what are you looking to do next in your career? And people just aren't always prepared to answer those questions. And so what this framework is about is get ahead of this so that you are clear and concise and confident when you are asked to make these decisions. The hard work has been completed, and it's an ongoing process. I mean, this is a lifelong process, right? This isn't transactional. This isn't something that we just do, check the box, and we're done. It's a lifelong professional management cycle.
Yeah. And so many folks have identified the planning as being particularly challenging. And as you've identified this, Tara, this builds. So the stronger you feel about the planning, the easier the other steps.
Right.
And yet the planning, I mean, I guess you could do part of that on your own, but oftentimes it's a conversation. It's a conversation to help you understand options and scenarios. And that then involves one's manager, one's leader, one's boss, oftentimes.
Right.
And so as we're looking at this, the other perspective we want to take is, what does it mean within the organization to apply this to be able to enable the manager to have that conversation? Talk to us in terms of the strategies to implement this at the enterprise level, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Well, I appreciated one of the comments earlier in the Q&A box around that this framework could be used to guide the conversation, which you can review that framework from 2 lenses, one from your own self-development, and then one from, wow, I'm a career coach for others. I'm not just the people that report to me, but people in my network, my neighbors, anybody asking for career advice, you kind of step into that role of career coach. So that framework, although helps an employee own their career, it's a guide for managers and leaders to support those conversations for sure. So yes, what we have here is when somebody wants to bring in, lead your career or a career development strategy in general, there's multiple angles that we need to take into consideration. The framework that we just walked through, which we'll call Lead Your Career Framework, that is primarily an employee strategy, allowing them in a self-directed way with manager support and guidance and conversation to take ownership of their own career. That can be implemented in things like workshops, speaking events, the self-directed workbook, customized, tailored for the organization, et cetera. So that's like programming. And that's where a lot of us are comfortable because it's maybe what we do for our job, learning and development programming. This is just another avenue on career development. The manager leader strategy, and this is going to vary by organization, of course, but this is around how to ensure that the conversations are taking place, not just check the box once a year, fill out a form, but how are we having these micro conversations throughout the whole year around career? And that's I'll say, a toolkit, a discussion guide, some questions, some starter questions to help them with that process. An understanding of what is that foundational talent system and process that this is all kind of layered on top of. So it's all kind of threaded together. And the point of the HR partner strategy is a lot of HR leaders and business partners and generalists, they're asked to be a career coach when that's not necessarily something that everybody is strong at. And so this framework can also support sort of upskilling, or I'll say train the trainer type approach on all things career development, to learn from some certified career coaches, some experts in this space, so that the organization as a whole can elevate their ability to provide these development services.
And you were describing so many different strategies that need to be considered to bring this into an organization. Talk a little bit more in terms of how to sync that up with the talent and succession planning processes. Because there's, at one level, sure, we can do training. There can be workshops. We're all familiar with that approach, and it's an important step. How can this then go beyond that and sync it up into more people, talent, succession processes itself?
Well, I mean, taking this up just one layer, I think when an organization values internal mobility, which, and all I mean by that is we want people to move around. And I don't mean every 6 months or even every 2 years, but it's just whatever that cycle, whatever makes sense for that particular situation. We value movement. What we're doing is we're growing and developing our people so that the business needs don't outgrow us. Like if we never develop our people and the business needs change, we're going to have to bring people in from the outside. So by moving people around, challenging them, growing them, developing them, they become more ready related to a succession plan because they have more experiences, they've been challenged, they've overcome more obstacles or whatever that might be. And so where career development sinks in with, I'll say, career readiness and succession planning is the employee's voices in there. Hey, I've done this reflection. I know what I'm aspiring towards. So I want this. I'm motivated to make this happen. So that's one critical piece. And then the second is that movement certainly just creates a more valuable workforce because they're more knowledgeable on the business.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's fantastic. So in terms of this talent mobility, we talked earlier around the different sizes of organizations. How does that impact this talent mobility concept? Because I could see some organizations saying, yes, we have lots of places and lots of opportunities. And other organizations may be smaller or within a specific business unit. They might say, we don't have as many. And yet the career development conversation can still happen in helpful ways. What does that look like so that career conversations can still be helpful regardless of the size of an organization?
Right. Well, and some of the smaller companies, I'm even thinking of a startup where somebody is wearing 10 hats because they don't have 10 different people to do that job. So what's the conversations that need to be had to highlight what is it about this role that you're enjoying? What about this role gets you excited to come into work on Monday mornings? If you could eliminate something from your role, what would that be? So the career conversations can still take place regardless of the size of company, because oftentimes we have a real situation where we can shape our current role. So this isn't always about making a change. It's about redefining perhaps the role that we're in or finding a new challenge. And we can do that through our own initiative, but it's so much easier to do that when we know what we want, because we've gone through this framework to figure out, hey, this is missing from my job. I'm going to go raise my hand and volunteer for this special project, and I'm going to get some of that exposure and experience. So you don't have to be jumping around and moving a lot to have this make sense.
That's great. So folks, please, as you have questions around career development, career management, career progression, please include them in the Q&A. We'll be able to then reference them as we continue to talk through this topic here. And Tara, here's a question for you.
Sure.
Say I'm a manager, okay? And I have 5 or 7 people reporting to me.
Okay.
What are the things that I want to make sure I do be able to have productive conversations so that my people say, yes, my manager can talk about this stuff. I'm having productive conversations. What should I do?
Well, I mean, I don't know, this is difficult to answer, Daniel, because everybody's going to have different styles and different talent, processes and systems. I mean, some of this is reading the moment. And so let's say you're finishing a project and you're debriefing on how the project went. It's a prime example to ask those questions that I gave a few minutes ago as examples. What was it about this project that, stretched you in a way that you were learning some things that you hadn't learned before? So, I mean, even just having a bank of questions, I think people really only need 3 or 4 kind of starter questions, and then the conversation really evolved. But people can kind of pick and choose from a database of questions what's going to align with their style and their approach. But we can't just have the conversation. If all we do is have the conversation and it goes nowhere, that's not going to be a win-win situation. So this is where kind of embedding some of this into a talent system could be useful. Embedding it into a development plan. So I'll speak for myself. There were times in my career where I had to list 3 goals and then 1 professional goal. And I did that because I needed to check the box and turn the form in. It wasn't necessarily aligned with where I wanted to take my career. It was about, in this moment, I got to fill out this form and get it submitted. If I went through this career planning process and I knew where I was heading, I could create my development goals based on the gap analysis I conducted to make sure that I'm ready when that position is available or it makes sense for me to take it on. So I don't know.
No, those are great comments. And I'm looking at some comments here. Deborah's making some great references, especially to state interviews. Talk for a second, Tara, in terms of the power of the state interview in relationship to overall career development, because in some ways they're very similar. And in fact, there seems to be very logical connections to sync up those ideas.
Yeah. Well, this is all around when the questions are being asked, it's really about getting curious and learning and caring and listening with your whole body of the responses that you're hearing. And that can be very powerful in showing that employee that they are valued and that the intention of the organization is to keep them and grow them and develop them, and that their voice is being listened to. And I think you could put this, wrap that idea under a number of different processes. A stay interview is a great example of that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, and so, well, I was also going to ask, sometimes a manager or a leader or a boss might fall into the trap of accidentally over-promising something during a career conversation. We've had those moments, or fear those moments, of then not knowing what to say or do, and suddenly we just committed indirectly or directly to something. How does this process, how does bringing this to a broader conversation within the organization help minimize or manage that sometimes tendency?
Yeah, so when we brought Lead Your Career workshops into one of our clients, we added a section called having an authentic career conversation, because the client was concerned that managers would have a tendency to tell the employee what they wanted to hear versus being really realistic. And sometimes this is a matter of doing some training, providing some tools and how to have those authentic career conversations, bringing that the idea that if it's coming from a genuinely caring place, an employee is open to that type of feedback that might not be what they want to hear, but it's truth and in reality. But I kind of have that attitude of, it's not this can't ever happen. It's what can we do? What can you do to make this happen? And the onus is on that employee to put a plan together to strengthen themselves in a way that might make that more of a stretch goal possible. Now, if something is overpromised and it's underdelivered, I think we probably all know how that ends in the long term. But being transparent and upfront about it is the best we can do. Address it, head on.
Yeah, and that very much relates to one of the questions that just came in, which is, how do you balance developing people's careers with limited promotion opportunities? If there are fundamentally not as many new kinds of roles to jump into, how do you still have that conversation? How would you comment on that?
Well, I think there's a variety of ways that employers can be creative. And so I'll give you just a couple of examples. Perhaps there are employee resource groups or United Way campaigns being run, or leadership opportunities inside the organization that require some volunteering. It will allow the employee to get extra exposure, more visibility, take on something new. Maybe they get involved in hiring new, interviewing new people, or going to campus to conduct interviews, whatever. Finding ways to do something outside of the day-to-day job. Another example a company was doing that I learned of were things like, I think they call them learning labs, or even sort of like a gig economy inside the company. How do you do some of that cross training, externship type ideas of where people can learn about other roles and potentially, I don't want to say swap roles, but that's kind of the idea is, hey, I'm doing this. I want to go explore and learn about other areas and potentially try that. Also making connections, just meeting people. So really getting into what is it that employee would value and finding ways to bring that into the current job through stretch assignments, connection, that sort of thing.
Yeah. What's such a beautiful idea here that I keep hearing over and over in your comments is this idea that the manager or boss can focus on what is possible. What can we do? Instead of focusing so much on all the things we cannot do. And that in and of itself is such a mindset shift,
right,
as well as coupled with the other idea you've been consistently mentioning, which is it needs to be owned by the employee, by the individual, by the leader, by whoever that person is, and then to be enabled. Here are the skills, here are the conversations, not overpromised, but enabled so that there is something to then do. Any other reactions or comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on to be reminded of the employee owns the process, and it's their career. Nobody cares about their career more than they do. And when we do this session with managers, their shoulders are up here because it's so stressful for them to think about telling their employees what they should do next. That's incredibly stressful to have that weight on their shoulders, that they are the ones that are supposed to advise their team on what they should do next. And what we've done is we've said, remove that weight. That weight is gone. That is not your job as a manager. The employee has to figure it out. And then the manager coaches, advises, connects, supports, sponsors, gives feedback, whatever that looks like. And so the manager's shoulders are up here. And by the end of the session, they're down here because they're like, oh, thank goodness, I don't have to figure this out for everybody, because I got to figure it out for myself, by the way.
There is that interesting assumption we put on ourselves that we have to have the right answers all the time. And for us to be more informed, to help us recognize, wait a minute, we may not need the right answers in the way that we think. It might be a little different.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. I've not seen this question yet, but I think this is often one that we will think about as a concern. And the question is, so what if we talk about career development and we have conversations and then they leave? That's not in my best interest. I'm just helping them get ready for another gig somewhere else. Why should I do it? And I'm being a little purposefully, extreme in this, but that's a legitimate concern. As you're hearing this, Tara, how do you respond to that?
Well, I think there's a saying that says, what if you don't invest and they stay, or whatever, So, I mean, it kind of goes both ways. But when I was a full-time, head of career development for an executive MBA program, I had a sponsor of someone in that program ask me, why would you provide career coaching to my executive when I'm paying for them to attend this MBA program? I mean, they were fully sponsored by the company. And my response was, I'm not coaching them to leave. I'm preparing them and coaching them to stay. And ultimately, that leader was promoted to a vice president, actually a global role. And he hadn't updated his resume for 15 years. He hadn't, interviewed competitively for 15 years. And so by investing in his career development, it allowed him to take on a senior level role at that company, whereas otherwise, he may not have had the confidence to go for it. He may not have been, had the presence to show up like an external executive candidate would. So for me, the risk reward, it's a no-brainer. The reward definitely outweighs any risk. But people think LinkedIn is a job search site. I'm on LinkedIn every day, and I'm definitely not searching for a job. So I view it as a networking site and a connecting site. So it's all your, frame of mind and how you're viewing things.
That's a great one. And again, as there are other questions, please, for our listeners, please feel free to jot this in the Q&A. We'll be able to address it here on this topic, or frankly, any other topic that might be on your mind, as we all are striving to develop and strengthen people in various ways. I want to go back to something, Tara, you mentioned. You haven't said the word control specifically, but I keep thinking about that as one of those mindsets that sometimes the organization can get into. We need to control the conversation. We need to make sure they're not loose ends, or that there's different expectations that might be unfulfilled, or we can't give exactly what they want. All of these different, well-intentioned, often, mindsets. How do you balance the level of control that the organization can have or let go of, and essentially what level of control the employee can have, especially within this topic of career management? How do you balance that sense of control? Or is that even the right mindset to even have these conversations well?
Well, I mean, I think this is where the HR strategy and the talent systems and the foundational support for career development is an important part of this process. I mean, at the end of the day, we're always going to have managers going rogue and doing things that might not necessarily be in line with the goals of the initiative. I think that's where HR business partners can really be that strategic arm and support for their managers to help them and guide them, ensure that they are utilizing these discussion guides or these resources that are being shared. I don't think anybody wants to make false promises. When I first started speaking on Lead Your Career with Stewart Leadership a number of years ago, someone in the audience said, so if somebody says I'm in marketing and I want to go over to finance, are you saying that we should just let them do that? Absolutely not. My guess is they don't want to go from marketing to finance. They haven't gone through the career planning process. So why don't we help them figure out what is it they really want, and then, find a way to expose them to different things and support them. So this is not about entitlement. This isn't about employees, getting everything that is on their list of wishes, nothing like that. This is just about intentionality, making strategic decisions, not getting wooed away from our companies for an extra $5,000, doing the same job. So it's not a growth opportunity, same job, I'm just going to make a little more money. Let's just allow people to be more strategic in how they make these decisions.
Yeah, great points. Okay, so if an organization hearing all this, they say, all right, where do I start? What makes this sense? Well, what's the first thing that I need to do? How would you reply to an organization saying for career development, where do we start with this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, naturally, I always want to just start because I'm so curious. I have a lot of questions, and I would just welcome like an introductory call to kind of dig in and learn what they're doing now, what's working, what isn't working. I do love to bring the Lead Your Career workshop to life. So whether that's piloting that for a group of emerging leaders that are hungry for this type of content, or maybe a group of HR professionals that want to upskill in the areas of career coaching. So I think just trying on this framework to see how it might fit with your company is a really easy way to get started. And it just opens up the conversation to explore what may work, what might not work, what's the right timing for a company, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's well. And the other question I have for you is, there are so many tools that you have in your toolbox related to career development.
Right.
What's the one tool that you're like, yes, please, I emphasize this as much as possible. What's the one tool that folks should use to best help develop their career, at least to start it out with?
Okay, well, Daniel, you're kind of setting me up here because I want to mention the Lead Your Career workbook, only because I'll share with you my passion around this. Not everybody can afford a career coach. Not every company offers career development or career advice or guidance or things like that. So a year ago, about a year and a half ago, I just became very passionate about creating a self-directed opportunity for people to work through this process. So for those on the call, you may not know this, but my undergrad was in finance. So, I mean, I'm very analytical, I'm very process-oriented. So for a decade, I was learning from 15 to 20 experts in the career space, from all over on personal branding and resumes and career planning and you name it. And the 10,000 hours is probably real. And this system, this Lead Your Career system, curated all of that insight into a step-by-step guide and process in a self-directed way. And so for somebody who's really figuring out that career exploration, I feel like that's a one-stop shop that curated 10,000 hours of content. For other areas, like if somebody's focused on a job search, that's a different resource. If somebody's really wants to dig into revamping their internal resume or their resume in general, I've got a resume resource. So I've got little onesie, twosie resources here and there. But the workbook really was intended to curate this into a process that can be easily followed by anyone.
That's fantastic. And it sounds like they can go to, where can they find this workbook, by the way?
Well, the easiest thing to remember is leadyourcareer.com. Yeah, so we've made that easily accessible just for those people that are really needing something quick.
Okay, last question for you, Tara, unless there are other questions here. Last question is, what is the best piece of advice? What is the best piece of advice that you would give to others as they're navigating and building their careers? What is, you've given so much advice, you've heard so much advice. What is one that really stands out to you that you would give to help people manage and grow their careers?
Well, I kind of stole my own thunder in the beginning of our time together, Daniel. And it was really from a mentor of mine from mid-90s. he said to me, make sure you're always running towards something and not away from something. And that just changes the whole dynamic of how a decision is going to be made.
That's well put. Well put. I am seeing one other question here that came in. Provide some thoughts, Tara, for if somebody's motivation is really focused on the title or the money as their main drivers. How do you work with that person best in terms of their career when they're so really singularly focused?
Yeah. You know, I think we have to understand that some drivers for individuals might not match up with our own drivers. And so when I talked about that list of guiding criteria, that list of 10 to 12 key things that we're looking for, title and or money might be in the top 5 of that list for some people. And we can respect that and get curious about it and understand it. Now, you know, and you can also be open with direct feedback. You know, I had somebody say to me early in my career, I don't care what you call your title. It's about the accomplishments that you end up delivering and value in that role. And so, you know, that was kind of a wake-up call. Yeah, title doesn't matter. It's about the accomplishments. And so this person might just need some coaching. And because their frame of mind, their mindset hasn't had an opportunity to shift to understand what does that really mean. But if they really value title and money, let's own it. Let's let them have that and put it in their list of criteria. And it's 2 of 10 things that they're evaluating. So, you know, there is a little bit about direct feedback. You know, I've had somebody give me direct feedback. I was probably 25. And he said to me, Tara, you're becoming knowledgeable in everything and an expert in nothing. What do you want to do with your career? Well, 30 years later, we're friends. And I've told him that he said that to me and it was a wake-up call. And he's like, I didn't say that. There's no way I said that. I said, yeah, you said that. And so sometimes we just need to, you know, share feedback and get curious and learn more about what is driving that. But it's not our job to change what they value either.
Excellent. Well said. Tara, thank you so much for being part of the Leadership Growth Hour.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you, Daniel. Thanks everybody for investing in this. Yeah.
For our listeners, please note that our next monthly Leadership Growth Hour will be on June 7th at noon Central Time, where we will talk about how to maximize your executive coaching experience. Joined with special guest Teresa Poole, Master Certified Executive Coach. To register for future Leadership Growth Hour events, please visit struleadership.com/events. We'd love to have you join us next time. Take care, everyone.